Hello and welcome to the AI Governance and Data Security Show.
Hosted by Nikki Chapple and Ryan John Murphy.
Your go-to source for practical insights on securing Microsoft 365 and Gen AI. In each episode, we're joined by Microsoft experts, MVPs, and industry leaders.
If you want to understand what it really takes to secure AI,
you're in the right place.
Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the AI Governance and Data Security Show. You may not know this name. This is the rebrand of the All Things M365 compliance show. We just wanted to make it up to date and relevant in this day and age where everything is related to AI. So my name is Nikki Chapple. I'm a principal cloud architect at Cloudway and a Microsoft MVP. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Nikki. Yes, my name is Ryan John Murphy. I'm a former Microsoft MVP, now a data security SE here in Manchester in the UK for Microsoft. And as you can see, we're joined today by a good colleague of mine, Christophe, to talk about a very important product. Christophe, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Christophe Fiessinger, and I'm a product management based in sunny Redmond. And definitely a pleasure. Thank you, Nikki and Ryan, for inviting me to your podcast.
You're very welcome. Thanks for sparing some time to come on. So, a big topic for today, right? And I think this is a product that we're seeing a huge uptake of inside of Microsoft ourselves. I mean, we've spoken a number of times this week, last week, the week before on customers coming to light to this, Christophe. That is Data Security Investigations, or DSI as an acronym. Microsoft loves an acronym, of course. So, Christophe, I get the biggest question I get, Nikki probably gets, and I see online is, what is it? Why do we have it? Where did it come from? And tell us all about it.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to give you a brief description and then feel free to ask additional questions. But yeah, Data Security Investigation is a new Purview solution that we literally reached general availability back in January. It was in public preview since RSA, which is the annual security conference held in California, since of April 2025. So it's been in preview for a while, getting customer feedback, and now I guess it's showtime. And it's been released to all of you, whether you're in Europe, in Asia, or North America. And the goal of data security investigation, it comes to complement our existing stack that I think a lot of you listeners or Ryan and Nikki are familiar with, to complement your arsenal to deal with data security, whether it's protecting data security or reacting to data security incident. So again, you're all familiar with our data loss preventions, Microsoft information protections to classify and label your data. Then you get insider risk management to look for risky pattern and hopefully deal with them before it's too late, to name a few. And think of DSI augmenting that existing stack. Whether you have a data security incident and you need to be reactive, aka an alert from insider risk management, an alert from Defender, or you want to proactively look at your data security posture, DSI is the tool to help you achieve that. And basically, the gap that we had in Purview is you didn't have a solution that will help you go deep on the content and assess whatever Nikki's top of mind in terms of data security. Maybe it's personal data. Maybe Ryan's, it's the secret acquisitions. Maybe for Christophe, it's passwords and secrets. Whatever that pattern is, the DSI was built natively to help you hunt that data security risk in the content that either left your tenant or still in your tenant and get in the wrong hand. And to give you a little additional context, because I think it's super important, it's something that was dear to a heart because, over 2 years ago, it was in the press, but Microsoft, got breached. And we had kind of this issue where a massive amount of data get in the wrong hand. And once the attacker got booted off the island, the next question was, what happened? What leaked? Because maybe I need to tell my customers. Maybe I need to tell my partner. Maybe I need to clean up some tokens. Maybe I need to clean up some passwords to prevent reentry into my tenant. So, that was dear to our heart. And what happens typically in this case is the scale of data that gets breached. And obviously, we don't have infinite time to analyze the data. We need to come up with an assessment very quickly so then we can start mitigating. And again, that drove that creation of data security investigation.
Amazing. So if I kind of replay that back then, it's using multiple Microsoft solutions to provide a deep dive analysis of data that's potentially been exfiltrated, breached, and provide you with like a blast radius type of artifact, Christoph, to say these are all the items and potentially emails and files and stuff and so on and so forth that's been caught up in that breach, attack, exfiltration type scenario, whatever the topic covers.
Yeah. So again, there's we're seeing a bunch of use cases. Maybe let's step back from the solutions and let's talk about use cases on real life things that I'm sure you heard or you listeners are familiar with. But I'd say one of the most frequent one is exfiltration from an employee. Christoph is grumpy. He didn't get his promo. He doesn't get along with his team, or he doesn't want to go back to the office, or Christoph is just grumpy Frenchman. It doesn't matter. And maybe I'm going to start on the way out. I want to leave a trail of destruction, meaning I'm going to steal as much as I can, whether it's contracts, whatever I get access to. And then Christoph leaves. So then the question eventually, someone's going to say, what the heck just left my tenant? Because I might need to tell the customers. If I'm in Europe, I might need to notify because there's GDPR laws. If I'm getting ready to sign a big press release with a CEO on a partnership, I might need to tell them that maybe something is on the dark web, yada, yada, yada. Well, more importantly, maybe Christoph left with passwords, tokens, and more. And maybe he's going to sell it on the dark web, and that will give entry to potential malicious outside individuals or nation state to get access to my tenant and do further chaos. So exfiltration is definitely a top of mind. We're dealing with humans. It doesn't matter if you're in 2026, 2020 and AI, people are humans and sometimes they do bad things. And by the way, it's not always bad. Sometimes it's kind of like an inside risk. We say 60% of the alerts is just people making a mistake. Why did Christoph send something to his Gmail? Did he forget that he can't send this contract? Was he maybe his laptop had some issue and he needed a contract because he gets to a customer? So again, at the end of the day, maybe someone in forensic under the CISO team needs to validate what happened. Worst case, or best case, we just need to slap that individual and remind them that this is not, you can't do that. And worst case, obviously, it's a true malicious insider. And in this case, we need to mitigate whatever the issue. So definitely exfiltration is a big thing that DSI comes into play. And again, I want to give you a recent story from the customers down under where it doesn't take a lot of data. It could be 300 emails or 7,000, but basically asking Nikki to look at 300 emails and just to make it more fun, pretend half of those emails are in French, Spanish. And we say, Nikki, you're the forensic person. Go figure out what the heck happened. It might take Nikki a little while. It's sure you get tools to translate, but it's still 300 files that could be verbose. And she might look for one pattern in the first pass to forget that she's also got to look at, I don't know, social security number or password number. So again, it's fairly tedious. And this day and age, with AI, you can do this very fast, language agnostic, tell the pattern, and voila, we can analyze it. So exfiltration definitely a big use case. And when I say exfiltration, I'm doing it a broad term. It could be an employee doing it, what we call an insider, or it could be a breach, outside in, just stealing things. I know there's different terms for it, but I'm simplifying it. And then the other, I say, big use case we're seeing customers ever since the public preview is just, again, it's typical. Either people make mistakes or people are intentionally want to do something bad. And we've seen DSI being used for things like fraud, bribery, harassment. Again, the trick is DSI is kind of like the first AI first. I know it sounds cliche solutions, so it's using all the cutting edge AI. So it's, you might say, Christoph, maybe I heard of you. You used to own communication compliance or things like that. Yeah, we can do that. But the AI in DSI is so much better. You can just misspell a word you're looking for. AI will figure the alternate spelling and figure out the thing you didn't even know existed. And by the way, it can do it across languages. The key use case. And then just to go back to your excellent question earlier, the reason we've connect with all the solutions is typically we say there's two angles to it. There's reactive, so there's plenty of alerting solutions that we have. First one is Defender. You're a SOC, you're in Defender, that's your control tower, and you get alert that graduate to incident. Well, guess what? In Defender, you might see some mailbox breached, but you don't have the ability to say, what was in that mailbox? Is there something critical that I absolutely need to deal with, like a password or token? So that's where you can go from Defender to DSI, from a Defender alert of the incident. But we also integrate with insider risk management, from a case. Very soon, it's on our roadmap. We're going to integrate with endpoint DLP alerts. And again, the trick is, sure, you can capture all the endpoint DLP alerts and you can get zillion alerts. By the end of the day, if someone goes to Nikki, I need to know exactly what was Christophe printing on the endpoint before he left. There's only one way at scale for Nikki to answer that question, and it's with DSI, right? We can't expect Nikki to open files after files, different languages, and come up with reasonable answers with a high quality of what the heck was Christophe doing on his endpoint. So that's the reactive. And again, like I said, we have a use case that we publish at Ignite. We've told you that a lot of companies are not waiting for something bad to happen, especially, good security team, good mature CISO organizations. There's definitely a lot of tools in Purview to help you that. But how do I proactively constantly look for flaws in my garden? How do I make sure it's groomed? How do I make sure Nikki doesn't, open sharing on our critical SharePoint site, and potentially this Ryan guy that doesn't have access can see very sensitive things or credentials. And maybe Ryan is a good guy, he's not going to use it for bad intent, but maybe again, Ryan is having a bad day and he's going to start grabbing things. So the Toyota use case is proactively their red team found credentials in SharePoint. And why was there a credential in SharePoint? Because someone put use SharePoint as their code repo. But again, it was broadly shared and it's just a bad place because if an attacker or true malicious human, inside or outside, gets a hold of that, it could be pretty significant because if you get access to the keys to the safe, then voila, right? So that's an example of a customer's proactively looking for risk, dealing with it before it's too late. And DSI can come and help with that.
Yeah, I think that's really important, that proactive side of things, because, you're using the best of the AI tools to actually be able to investigate, react, and do the proactive stuff. But we know that the bad actors out there have got the top AI tools as well. So if they did get into the organization, it becomes much easier for them to surface millions and millions of files and emails and that really quickly, because again, they've got the similar sorts of tools as well. They could do the same sort of thing. So much better that we identify it internally and mitigate it before the bad actors come in.
Yeah. I think as well, while we're talking about products, one of the things, and me and you have spoken about it before as well, Christoph, is it's not an e-discovery tool, right? People come to this and say, well, I've got e-discovery premium. Why can't I just use e-discovery premium? This is a pure developing, from what you've just said, full intentionally data security investigation solution that does beyond just point and search discovery and then reviews in a review set, right?
Yeah, so a couple of things because, it's always grounded. We're the same engineering team. My office next door is the engineering lead for e-discovery and DSI, and the whole office is here in sunny Redmond in Washington State. So I'm part of the DSI and e-discovery team. So we're very thoughtful of what is the positioning for obviously e-discovery or beloved e-discovery, one of the first Purview solutions that has been around for a long time, really catered at legal persona and legal workflow. Whereas again, DSI was reborn out of that data security SOC persona dealing with that incident. Now we're very thoughtful that yes, we know that in the past, when you didn't have any other tool, people might have used content search or e-discovery as part of the tool set to analyze content. Because again, there's no tool outside of Purview to analyze all that M365 content, let it be email, team, copilots, or SharePoint or OneDrive files. So yeah, we're very thoughtful. But you're right. It was really designed from that incident, which is what does a security analyst or forensic analyst need to deal with that incident at scale? And when you folks either you try DSI or definitely encourage you to try, you'll see that we have things like credential detections. And we don't just detect credentials; we literally give you the string. We tell you what type of credentials, and we give you the reasoning. Again, that's very specific to data security type incidents, and we can do a lot more. So there's definitely things that are similar, against both solutions, both look at M365 content, and I'm saying all of it. And, yes, we're looking at potentially going outside because, you can have a breach outside of Microsoft. By the end of the day, it's the same dilemma. I've got a bunch of content that get breached and I need to reason over that content to know what I need to do next. So yes, expect for Stephanie things that are similar, that we're looking to have a unified experience across both solutions. But for Stephanie, to your point, Ryan, things are very specific. And for instance, that's why when we went in public preview, right out of the gate, we're natively integrated with Defender. And, like you mentioned also briefly, we also integrate with the Sentinel graph because, again, from a SOC perspective, it's one thing to analyze petabytes or millions of files and say, here it is, here's the needle that has a secret that Christophe stole. But it's another maybe to look on the activity. I got Christophe red-handed. He's going to get fired. He's going to get it. But maybe that Ryan guy also look at the file. And so I was investigating Christophe to realize Ryan and Nikki are all up to it. So the definitely differentiation, again, in summary, legal persona discovery, security persona, data security investigation. But yes, there's gestures and mitigation that people expect in both solutions, regardless of personas. So stay tuned. There's already things we're doing to harmonize or be uniform where it needs to be uniform. And there's, like I say, clear differentiation in one on the other. And by the way, we keep innovating on e-discovery. I also want to be, we got a dedicated engineering team that, it's been a busy year on e-discovery, but, we've done a lot of modernizations on the user experience and scale.
Yeah, definitely. eDiscovery is here to stay for its own purposes, and DSI is obviously going to evolve for its own purposes as well. And I think side by side they live in harmony, so it's all good. So I think, should we take a look at it, Christophe, to take a look around DSI?
Sure. I'll share. Maybe we can put links in the recording and the comment on YouTube, but there's a video, much more polished video that I did on Microsoft Mechanics. But regardless, you go to Purview and on the left knob, I know there's a lot of solutions, but eventually you'll get to data security investigations. And this is the homepage. So the one thing I want to call out is one thing that throw you off, because DSI is natively built on the latest AI stack. Guess what? I'm sure you're all familiar, but using prompt token on output tokens, spinning GPU in the back end is an expensive task. And we can't just absorb the cost and let Nikki run prompt all day and be unbreaking even. So DSI, when we went up the gate, is behind what we call a consumption model. So basically, you only pay for what you use, and there's two meters for DSI. One is on storage, so the size of your investigation. Is it a petabyte? Is it a gigabyte? Whatever it is. And then the other meter is on compute unit, which is pretty much, the GPUs, the AI reasoning spinning. So the more you reason, the more you're soliciting input prompt on that input token, output tokens, and the more it's going to cost you. And to help, so that's why, here in, I've already done it. So, it doesn't matter if you're E5, E3. What's funny is we get a lot of small customers, like small business premium, not the large, but we're jumping with both feet because remember those two use cases, exfiltrations or dealing with insider risk. A lot of customers maybe don't have the maturity nor the bandwidth to, let's say, deploy RM and DLP. But the problem remains, which is what did Christophe leave the 100 people company with? So that's the pay-as-you-go. And to help you with that, we've got, there's a demo here, but we also give you a cost estimator to get a flavor on how much is it going to cost. And we also, through the life cycle of the solution, there's a usage dashboard. So at any point in time, Nikki, Ryan, and whoever's listening to this call can see by investigations, how many of those two units, storage and compute, are you consuming? And you can just stop. And so that's what you're seeing here, storage and compute units. Now, I know a question I get a lot is, hey, Christophe, we've been using Security Copilot, and in this world, yours is called CU. I apologize. I wish it was simpler. I'm just the engineering guy, but I feedback loud and clear that we can probably harmonize and not create different meters, different units. So stay tuned on the simplification. But as of June 2026, that's what you get. And again, to me, the good news is that probably explains why we got so many small, medium-sized customers is you only pay for what you need. There's no fixed costs per head that you need to pay every month. So that's how to get started with DSI. Pretty straightforward. And then once you get started, basically you can, again, if if you get the maturity, if you already deploy some of those other solutions that generate alert, then you could go in XDR and kick off an investigation. You can go in RM and from the case, kick off an investigation. Or here, just because we don't have a lot of time, I can show you can go directly in the DSI front door and kick off an investigation. And this is something that literally just came out of the Redmond kitchen last week. I literally did a little post on LinkedIn this morning. But basically, what we've learned from customers, and also back to your questions, Ryan, earlier, is that persona, the SOC persona, they're not very familiar with Purview, query language, and stuff like that. And so what we've learned is, hey, help me get started. I don't have a PhD in TQL. So help me get started. So we've just launched those 4 templates, which basically effectively, in this case, I can just put a name and voila, it's going to start investigations. Or if I already know my way around, I can modify any of those parameters and date range. So we've already pre-built again to help you get that understanding of what the solution can do and get that value as quickly as possible. And if you already know how to fish, so here's the query, and I could change this. Already added Christophe, and I can use the query builder. For those of you that are familiar with eDiscovery, it's the same query builder. And I can change locations and yada yada yada. And the other thing another starting point that I forgot to mention, but yes, you can create your query and you can point, the Nikki's OneDrive or Nikki's Teams to look at her generative AI interactions if you get suspicion of something risky. The other thing that get pretty significant usage is this audit integration. So what we're finding out in an exfiltration scenario is typically you don't want to just look at all of Nikki's OneDrive. And by the way, Nikki is perfect, using your disclaimer. And basically, instead, you want to be smart and say, show me all the files that Nikki downloaded, all the files she printed, all the files where she downgraded a label, or all the files that, she sent to her Gmail account. And yes, you might say, hey, Christophe, you can do all that in RM. Absolutely, RM can give you that risk. But if you don't have RM or you want to quick things, Unify Audit Lock is your best friend. So here, effectively, this is the same controls you had on audit. And you'd say, here's Christophe. Here's all the activities I want. And then when you kick off this query, you put a date range and, just click add to scope. What it's going to do is say, for this person, for all the activities I care about, every time there's an audit log entry, retrieve it. And for every audit log entry, it's going to say Nikki downloaded file 123 from OneDrive or from SharePoint. We're going to go fetch that file, right? So basically, we're building a corpus on Nikki's activity versus building a corpus on everything Nikki has been doing for the past 20 years in the tenant. Sure, you can do the latter, but again, in the urgency as a SOC analyst, and this is not a legal outcome where you're going to go in the court of law and you need to be thorough with all the evidence. Here, you just want the one she left the org with, or she shared externally, or whatever it is. So that's another starting point that's very popular, again, back to that exfiltration scenario. So you can, again, different ways to start depending on the outcomes and the scenarios. And then you can just click add to scope, which is exactly the same process we do with eDiscovery. And from there, it's going to do this magic and start retrieving whatever you want. Copilot, generative AI, agent interactions, email, Teams. So I'll just skip that. I'll show you an investigation that I already have. And again, this is one where I came from an insider risk management case. You can see here, we tell you the source. So this one, no cheating. Christophe did come create this case from insider risk management. And basically, when you bring the data over, there's a very important step that we do where we basically prepare the data for AI. Basically, in technical term, we're running large language models to do embeddings. And what this means is, the example I give is pretend I type the word cat, the animal, and pretend I've got another document with the word dog in French. When I type this query here, it's going to return both. Why? Because we've run embeddings. We know that a cat in English, a dog in French are both animals. So I could type a query, say, give me animals, and automatically knows that association that cat and dogs are still, could be defined as animals. Therefore, I'm going to return both results. Give you a stack rank because there's a cosine value. I'll spare you the math. But that's the kind of thing that suddenly you can see. This is very different than doing exact keyword search with discovery. It's very different than doing a regular expressions. And you can see, especially if you're looking at credentials, passwords, or like I was telling you earlier, bribery. Bribery, this is a true story. Customer was looking for bribery, healthcare customers, and they literally typed the word ticks, like TIKS. What you retrieve is a team chat between an employee and someone outside, where someone internally was offering someone outside tickets for Super Bowl. So here, the person misspell. It's like, hey, Nikki, 2 ticks for the World Cup, right? But in my query, I might have typed tickets. It will retrieve that match because it knows ticks is very similar to tickets. It knows that World Cup, maybe tickets are associated with World Cups or whatever game you're following. So again, that's the kind of thing that you can see in a data security incident where you're hunting for those risks and you don't have time to write every permutation of every misspelling or Christophe creativity on try to fly under the radar by misspelling words or throwing French and English just to get away with it. AI will do that. And so I'll show you that. For instance, here, I already done a query. I got a data set from RM and I already typed Project Obsidian. That's one of the data set that I've been using. Pretend is a secret acquisition. But what we do is, actually, let's do it again. Type Project Obsidian and, pretend it's a secret project, but it could be whatever you want. Cats, dogs, credentials, whatever. And what it's going to do, it's going to look at this data set. I only have 104, but again, we have customers that have been running this around hundreds, thousands, millions or more. And it's going to reason over this data set. And because the data is being prepared for AI, that's when it finds those relationships. And that suddenly I'm finding things that I would not have found otherwise. I've done just exact keyword match. So this takes a few seconds, but basically it's going to return out of that corpus how many documents are Project Obsidian. Now, I'm not going to walk through every document, but trust me, in there, I get misspelled version of this. I got different languages, Arabic, I got Japanese, Korean, Russian, French, and it finds that. I could have typed Project Confidential. Trust me, the Korean document doesn't have it in English saying Project Confidential, but in Korean it say confidential project, blah, blah, blah. And it finds those patterns. So again, that's the kind of thing that you can only do with AI as you're hunting for risk. And to prove it to you that this is a real demo, you can organize your data. And yes, we give you out of the box way to organize your data from PI to passwords. But watch here, because I put that query, we're automatically learning what is Nikki cares about. And we already start to say, Project Obsidian confidential projects. How did it figure this out? Because it knows in the data that there's a lot of document for that Obsidian tied to a confidential project. So suddenly it makes your life very easy. It's like, oh, this is exactly what I was looking for. And codename Obsidian, yada, yada, yada. Now, I've already done this, so you can see some of those outputs. And again, I'm just showing you, I'm not kidding. This is not a document in English, but yet it found the match for that query. I'm sure fair enough, it's protected. So that's the high level. The other thing that I think is worthy is mentioning is we can go a lot deeper. And typically when you knee deep into an incident, one of the things you might need is, let's say, credential extraction or PI. And, I've done it here in that data set. And basically we grab, doesn't matter how many documents, we grab each document and say, this is the pattern I want. Think of it as doing a prompt, except here you can do it hundreds of thousands of times. And voila, this is the document. It shows me how many of those patterns it found, what type of credentials. And with AI, the one thing that we know people want is, give me the confidence it's not hallucinating. So that's what we give you, the surrounding snippet, the thought process, and the list goes on. Obviously, this is a data set that I fed in a lot of things. This one doesn't have a lot of credentials, but it's got a lot of risks, I think, on this one. So we got different shades of cutting the data. It was like 13 different risk levels, from network risk to government risk to PI risk. I mean, you can look at it. This is well documented. But again, we're giving you, and yes, you can export that and show that to your legal team, show that to your CISO, show that to your CEO, whatever you need to do next. And all those things you can, add to mitigations. The workflow is typically you want to mitigate, right? It's one thing to confirm the smoking gun, but the other is like, okay, now we need to mitigate wherever the mitigation action is. Is it rotate a password, rotate a token, reset a password? Is it purge a document, which we support in DSI? Soon we're going to be adding the ability to add a label. Maybe that data is not labeled and maybe it's not full. But had we labeled the data, Nikki would have been able to share it externally. So maybe it's our bad. It's not Nikki's fault. So that's the kind of like high level workflow. It takes you to the mitigation tab, and voila. So I know it's a lot to absorb, but basically that gives you the end to end of identifying a corpus of data where you start in the DSI front door, you start from another applications, analyzing the data very quickly to find those patterns and then mitigate them as quickly as possible. As you can see, I'm pretty passionate. Whoever listens to the recording, if you got questions, definitely reach out and, work your way to Nikki, Ryan, or your account team or whatever. Find me on LinkedIn and happy to answer your questions. And again, one thing I want to mention, because again, one of the key differentiators is the AI analysis. This is not using our standard classification. None of this is using regular expressions. This is purely LLM to do embeddings and then generative AI to do the reasoning. This is not your Purview classic classification.
Got it. Got it. One thing I noticed there as well, Christophe, is you had the ability to purge data as well.
Correct. Yeah. This is something we've added. Again, expect more in the future. So some of you that know this, you can do purge and either probably to PowerShell commandlet. While we'll love PowerShell commandlet, we're also in 2026, and maybe it's not your cup of tea. Maybe your whole organization, then you don't have time for this. So we have a beautiful UX where you can say, all those prompts that Nikki did, or that chat between Nikki and Christophe was not tented. We need to delete that. Or maybe it was in a public channel. It puts the company at risk. So let's go purge that. So that's what this is, purging emails, Copilot interactions, team chat, all those three. So you can do that as part of your mitigation. And like I say, we're going to add more. And one that's high up there on the request from customers, the ability to apply a label, either because the data hasn't been labeled or it's wrongly labeled.
Wrongly labeled. Okay. So you can even identify and change the label based on really good. And I definitely think this is a powerful, powerful tool based on what you've just showed us there.
I had a question on the purging. I'm assuming that this type of purge will override any retention policy holds on the documents.
Yeah. So no, we abide by that. So excellent question, Nikki, because obviously we don't want to overwrite that. So it's clearly documented. So we can only purge what we can purge. And there's like a soft purge. I'll share it's, not my area of expertise, but I know it's a recurring questions if we respect that, and we do. And so definitely look for the documentation to get the exact answer, because that's definitely a destructive actions. And you need to know exactly, will it override your retention policy or not? And no, we don't. If it's on the hold, it's on the hold, and we don't touch that. So definitely, you can, and by the way, you can do simulations, but definitely, yeah, I think at the end of the day, read the documentations and be thoughtful, because if you don't have a retention policy and you could purge Christophe mailbox if you wanted to. Say great questions on the purge and legal hold.
Yeah. And I'll say as well, we will put your LinkedIn profile in the description of the podcast as well on YouTube and on Spotify. And we'll also include it in the LinkedIn post that Nikki and I post out. And I advise anybody who wants to know more about DSI, do give Christophe a follow, because he does share a pro tip every week, which I'm seeing a lot of people now gravitating toward and taking confidence from that and what you're sharing, to go back and use the tool in anger, as they say, to get what the best out of it. So definitely give Christophe a follow. Nikki, any closing questions?
I think it makes people's lives easier. I suppose the analogy I would use before, like e-discovery, is a bit like finding a needle in a haystack. You've kind of got to know where to search. And we're talking about millions and millions of artifacts, terabytes worth of data. Here, it's like you're standing outside of the haystack with a big magnet and all of those needles will come out. You can describe it in natural language, and then, it will find similes and things like that in the different languages. It's a real game changer.
And I think, thank you both. One thing I do want to do a shameless plug-in is, we don't pretend we know everything. This is a kind of a new kid on the block or new solutions. We're definitely convinced with the customer feedback, from the thousands of customers that have been using it, that there's definitely something. But help us prioritize the wish list to send that, the backlog, the feedback. It's like any software development. We have infinite IDs, but we have limited resources. So if there's things that you don't like, things you wish you had that would be the deal breaker or the killer scenarios, definitely reach out. I do mean it. Like, we don't pretend we know this. The space is moving very fast with AI and things like that. So definitely reach out to Nikki or Ryan. It doesn't have to be me on LinkedIn. You already had connections with those two amazing folks. So give us the feedback and they know how to get a hold of me. But definitely keep us honest on what's good. But more importantly, what would you like us to focus on as we continue to innovate on data security investigations?
Yeah, absolutely. Great call out. I'm more than happy to feed that back into Christophe for the right channels in Microsoft. Nikki, also being an MVP, has also access to those channels as well. Christophe and I have been talking a lot recently, trying to get some of my customers involved in it, which we've been successful with, and getting people's visibility on this, some demos and so on and so forth. So happy to take that on board and feed that back. But to close out, Christophe, really, really appreciate you sparing some time for us today. I know how busy you are, especially at this time of year, so we're very grateful. And thanks for joining us. And maybe we can do a version 2 of this when there's a bit more in there, maybe this time next year, or if any surprises come out at Ignite, right?
Sure, anytime. You know how to reach me. Always a pleasure to talk to you too and educate our customers of what's cooking in Renman and why we're doing those things. So
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. As you can see, we do have a name change. Please do follow that. We will be getting some socials around that as well. It is still Nikki and I. It's the same stuff, but as we've moved into more of the AI, data security, and governance side of things, Purview's obviously been brought along with that. So we're going to cover that from now on. Plus all the unstructured data stuff in Purview as well. We'll still do the same, but we're embracing everything that's new. Isn't that right, Nikki?
Yeah, so make sure you follow along with the AI governance and data security show. So thank you everyone for joining us, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.
Cheers.
cheers.
Thanks for joining us on the AI Governance and Data Security Show.
Subscribe for more real-world insights from Microsoft experts and the wider community.
As we continue to explore what it really takes to secure AI and govern data.
See you in the next episode.